Welcome to the JAMODI podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it. Coaches, the JAMODI podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot 360, the future of basketball is here.
That's the part of shot selection people don't talk about very much is good shooters passing up shots. And I actually think that's more common than when we talk about players struggling with shot selection. Some coaches automatically go to either shooting sixes or contested shots all the time or double step backs. No, I think within your offense, there are way more open opportunities, especially when they let their first touches their fingertips, that either we're not training them to see that and go, or we're not allowing it because we want 5 or 6 more actions to develop before we get to that scoring opportunity.
Yeah, I've had to tell, so you're familiar with flow or driving space, which we run. And so a principle is we pass through single gaps, we drive through double and triple gaps. I've had to tell my better drivers, you're not allowed to pass through a single gap. We need you attacking the big gaps almost every single time. Because if you don't, that means you're putting a lesser driver or a lesser skilled driver in that same situation. So same thing, right? I know Duncan Robinson, when he was on his two-way, maybe in the G League, Spoelstra said, I'm not calling you up until you can get at least 12 threes off a game. I think he was shooting 2 a game or something. So yeah, he had to learn how to get his shots off and make those reads. And he's really fun to watch as far as how he creates shots and reads. The Heat are really fun to watch how they play off the get game stuff. And so that was his area of growth. And we're kind of talking player development here. I'll throw this in. Savvy, S-A-V-I, is the identity piece. One thing we help our coaches do and the players that we work with is every player should know the next part of their development. So for Duncan Robinson, it's, man, you're a really good shooter. Now the next part of your development of your game that we need to build is the ability to get more shots off. So for me, the other player that I referenced was, all right, the next thing we need you to do is just attack more. That's it, right? And just that becomes their KPI or just the next part of their development. So since we were talking player development, I figured I'd throw that in because that's something that is so huge as far as players. Can they have a vision of where they're going and who they can be? And oftentimes just identifying one thing.
The problem with that I immediately go to is, as a coach, do I have the vision? Do I know what they do really well and what they can improve on that will fit into our style of play and connect to that player? Because not every player is the same, and not everybody does. Even in a free-flowing offense, it's amazing to me the fear that I've felt from coaches over the years of kind of going over to that style of play of, what if the wrong guy takes the shot? What if the wrong guy has the ball in his hands more often? And I've just seen the opposite. Even without telling them and without joysticking what they need to do, the ball seems to find, there's a hierarchy that develops. It finds the best shooters the most. The better playmakers find those gaps the most. And so it works out that way. But making sure that we know what a player needs to go to. And that's the part of maybe that growth mindset of listening to people like you, researching things, not being emotionally tied to what we've done in the past, so that I'm making sure I'm the best for them.
Yeah. I actually had this question recently of how do I know my best players are going to get the most shots? My answer is the exact same what you said. I could probably just copy and paste what you said. Is the ball finds your best players the most. And when they have the ball, they can do more with it. So it's automatically going to get more opportunities, right? If I have a triple gap and I'm the best player on the floor, the best player on my team, well, I'm going to create more advantages, right? So I'm either going to drive in for a 9 or drive to draw 2, and then now we're in dominoes. And I will say this, if you're truly worried about, let's say your best player is your racker, and you're really worried about the ball coming back to them, I would look at our shot selection. Are we taking suspect shots before it comes back? And I think the way your team shares the ball and your shot selection, so your passing and shooting, is a direct correlation of your culture. There you go. We had a really, really strong culture. So a lot of, like right now, we're doing a 4-week dive into the drive and space offense. So every Tuesday night, Tyler and I are on Google Meet, and all of our Grow members can attend live and ask questions, and we present content on drive and space this month. And a lot of the coaches are asking, well, gosh, like your team moves the ball so well. What drills do you do to get them to do that? And it's a mixture of drills, games, but also a big part of it is the culture piece as well. So we never really had to worry about our shot selection or the best players getting those touches once we fixed our culture. Not to say I've always had it figured out, still don't have it figured out. Once I made the true investment into being a transformational coach and building our culture, everything else becomes so much easier. Like even get them to buy into the defensive end or whatever is important to you. And then you said something that was really good too, is like, does the coach know the next part for their players' development? One note that I put, and this kind of goes with culture, so I think it fits here, is I think culture should be shared. So that we should build towards a mix of a coach-led / player-led program. You hear player-led program. I don't think a program should be 100% player-led. Right? Coaches get paychecks too, right? But there should be a really nice blend. So here's a practical tip or application for coaches that are listening as far as what does your player need next? What I did every Sunday, I just had a list of our roster 1 through 24, JV varsity. Next to each player's name, I just wrote down what they needed that week. Sometimes it was Matt needs extra shots. Mark needs extra Barclays, but other times it's so-and-so needs confidence. And that might just be a 1-minute conversation of how can we build confidence? How can we give them confidence? I would come up, that would be coach-led, right? Like this is me, the coach, identifying something I think they need or the next part of their game. I would ask them what they think too. And that gives you 2 things. And that could be, all right, so in your pre-practice routine, give me 5 reps of Barclays, and then you've got the rest of the time to work on what you think you need. And even if it's not what we think, at least we know what they're thinking about, right? Like let's say it's this guy let's go back to this player that's a really good shooter that doesn't shoot enough. Maybe he's saying like, coach, I think I need to work on my passing or my assist. And you're like, no. Well, okay. But first, let's make sure that you're not open, right? And when you're open, you're shooting. And then when you're not open, we can work on your assist or break it down that way.
Coach, there's so many good things that I've made some notes so that I can hit some points, because I feel you're one of those guys that you'll probably rattle off 4 or 5 things in a row that we could go down. I just recently read a little bit about life-changing or uplifting communication that we can give, and there's a really simple change. So like in that scenario where the player's like, I really want to work on my passing, I think so often I would say, hey, that's good, but what about this too? The but, instead of the but, say now. So it's, yeah, that's really good. Now, let's also do this. The now makes it seem like to him that I'm right on board with what he's thinking, even though it is passing against the wall, and I don't really care about that. But the now will connect it and not shut him down and make him actually feel like he's a part of it. I think the way that we communicate what we want them to do is huge. And that little change from but to now, I think you'll like this too. And I'm going to jump real quick to something else, but just had an awesome talk, or had a few months ago, but put it out with Greg Campy. And we were talking about the run that they had, but also talking about Golke, right?
I don't know.
Shooter, the guy that went off.
Yeah.
So I froze for a second, but I think but talking about him and talking about he's a good shooter, but he's like, Matt, we've had great shooters. We've had guys he had one guy shoot 242 threes in a year and 0 twos. He says the first time ever in college basketball that it's a D1 basketball it's happened. And he's like, so this isn't something like new. We just found him and we've been playing this way. And he's like, you know what I really get excited with shooters? And I kind of leaned in a little. And he said, when they go 1 for 12. And I kind of take a pause. I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, if they're willing to shoot 12 and only make one, that tells me a lot about who they are as a shooter. He said, you know who I don't really care about is the 1 for 4 guys or the 1 for 5 guys. He said, because then they didn't have the courage to continue. I may have added courage, but they didn't have the ability to continue to look for or hunt their shots after they missed a couple because they don't feel like it's their night. I just thought that was such a cool idea in building shooters' confidence or giving more courage to your players. It's that Duncan Robinson story of, guys, I don't care. It's what Doug Novak said. I don't care if you make it. You have to take it. Like, you have to take the open ones. But the ability, I told my stepson this a year ago when he got to be a junior, and his offensive position, or the importance, or I guess, or maybe how much he was carrying on his shoulders was going to increase the role. There's. And I said, buddy, you got to get to where you shoot 10 to 15 a game. You're going from 2 to 3 a game. And the biggest thing is going to be the war inside your mind. But I love that. Like, for us as coaches, do we have any of those guys that, man, they can shoot now? Not little Timmy continue to shoot step back threes at half court. Within our shot selection scale, do they continue to shoot 10 to 12? I think that's big time.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned shot selection scale, because if they're good shots or great shots, keep shooting, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I think as the coach, we first set that example. You mentioned the word courage, which I love, is like, they're going to get that courage from you. If you're not attached to outcomes and you're going to teach them not to, a lot of coaches, a lot of players, they result, right? Like, we missed that, so that was not a good shot. Or how many times have a player takes a suspect shot and it's like, no, and it goes in. It's like, all right, yeah, good shot. Like, ooh, thank goodness. It's like, no, not a good shot. And here's the thing. I think as a coach, you got to be really intentional. When that happened at practice, I would stop it and say, wait a second. Did we think it was a good shot before it left my hands? Like, no. Okay. Well, because it went in, that doesn't make it a good shot, right? It makes it it went in, which we like the result, but we don't want to take 60 of those a game.
That's
so
right.
we teach NATO not attached to outcomes, as the acronym, which is so important. So that, when your player goes 1 for 12, I agree. Like, I think they're showing a tremendous amount of courage, and they figured out that if I'm taking these shots in room, in range, in rhythm, it doesn't matter how many I've missed. I'm going to make the next one. I'm not attached to the outcome. It's not going to affect my confidence. And that's my role on this team. So like you said, like, we need you to continue to take those shots.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.